Hello everyone, welcome back to YK Reviews. For today's video, this is going to be about the movie Devotion starring Jonathan Majors and Glen Powell. And I know I'm very late to the party when it comes to this movie. For me, it's one of the most underrated movies of 2022, but watched it last week and not had the chance to make the review until now. But with this, it's going to be a spoiler review of Devotion, so let's get into it. So with Devotion, it's essentially based on a true story. It follows the pilot, Jesse Brown, who is basically the first black aviator in the US naval history, and his fellow pilot, Tom Hutner, help turn the tide in the Battle of the Korean War, and follows the events of that and what happens to Jesse Brown, because once again, this is a spoiler movie review here, and basically the events of what happened to Jesse Brown and like we see at the end of the movie of like what they're doing to help find his body. Now, first off, with this movie, it's going to be compared a lot to Top Gun Maverick, and once again, Top Gun Maverick is probably the best movie for me, in my opinion, of 2022. Was a fantastic sequel to Top Gun, a really great aviator movie, so a lot of comparisons will obviously be made. It's not up there as Top Gun Maverick, however, this movie is one of the top aviator movies if you're not comparing it to Top Gun. Like, Top Gun as a franchise is a classic and cannot be touched for me. But if you're comparing it to any other aviator movies, any other like Korean War or like plane movies, this is probably up there as one of the best when it comes to like what they did in the sequences in the third act and everything that they did show there. So when it comes to the actual runtime of this movie in itself, the runtime is pretty good. It's about 2 hours, clocks in at about 2 hours there. But the first half of the movie, it does show a lot of like training montages or like building up like the characters in itself and the relationship between Glen Powell and Jonathan Majors' character here, and the training, because essentially the planes that they're using, they haven't been tested before, so they're having to test it out and stuff. So you don't actually get full flight action sequences until the second half of the movie. However, I love what they're doing with the build-up of the actual plot in itself and the camaraderie between like Jonathan Majors' crew and like the pilots are all with him. Because like I said, in terms of the plot in itself, it's focusing on like the Korean War aspect based on the true story, and also focusing on him being the first black US naval aviator in America history. So then with the first act, the first half of the movie, you see Jonathan Majors, who I think did a fantastic job in this role. He really played the role to perfection, and with Jonathan Majors coming out with Ant-Man 3 playing as Kang, Creed 3 playing the villain in there, I think he's going to have such a fantastic 2023. He's a fantastic actor, and with his portrayal here coming across as dealing with the adversary that he has to go through, he sees his life and how he's such a like gentleman, how he's a great husband, a great father to his wife and his kid, how he's dealing with the racism that comes between it, because there's, even throughout the movie, there's that one particular line that he shows as whenever he does something or goes against particular orders to help benefit the mission, his consequence is going to be a lot different to like other people's consequences. And there's one line in there in the movie where he goes, he can't trust anybody, even when he's landing the plane on the boat, he can't even trust to make sure that they're actually going to make sure he lands safely. Like, he has that chip on his shoulder where he can't have faith in anybody else because of like his history and his background, basically. And the heartbreaking part here is of like, you have the sequences, and what's great about this sequence in particular is it's not overplayed. So you've got that particular sequence of him looking in the mirror, saying all the negative things to himself, and he even has his own book of every negative thing somebody has said to him, has it all written down in his own book. So him looking in the mirror, pumping himself up by saying all these negative things that have been told to him, back to himself to pump himself up, I thought was a really nice touch and a really great portrayal of how that was being presented to us. And then you've got the second part of the duo, when you've got Glen Powell's character, who's playing Tom Hutner, once again based on a true story. I think he did a fantastic role. Back-to-back aviation movies with Top Gun Maverick, and then his role in this movie, he also did a fantastic job. The back and forth, the way they were able to play off one another, I thought was fantastic to watch. And you see how he just grows to like that confidence of always having Jonathan Majors' back as he's like learning more about his life, learning more about the things that he has to be put up with, like For example, he's the one that sent the report when Jonathan Majors' character overruled his decision to go and like blow up one of the bridges, which was a success. He had to put that in the report, but then he understands the consequence of like Jonathan Majors' character having to go against orders to achieve a mission, what the consequence led to that. So just the way he's being educated along with what we're being educated with, I thought was a really fantastic role, and his charm, his presence in the movie was really felt. So I think the two of them together and the two of them separated was a fantastic sequence of events and a really great portrayal of both the characters there. You really feel that camaraderie, you really feel the heartbreaking sequence, especially towards the third act. You really feel that emotion and the power between them. And then you have to also speak about, once I mentioned, the crew in itself. I really like the camaraderie between them. You have like such great characters, like side characters within Glen Powell and Jonathan Majors' crew, and you really feel that camaraderie. There was a sequence when they went to France and then they went gambling at the casino, drinking with one another, meeting girls and stuff like that. You just feel that togetherness that they have with one another, always having each other's back. Even when that sequence of Jonathan Majors getting like reprimanded, you have them working together, writing a letter, signing everything, and to make sure that Jonathan Majors' character has their back. And it was just portrayed really well. Like, you have that emotional feel to it, especially when one of the characters who wasn't able to like land the plane properly ended up crashing. You can just feel that emotion between them. You can feel the heartbreak and the dread that they have after that sequence of events. And that's what I really liked about this movie. They had that friendship vibes between the two of them, like really strong mentality with one another and really strong connection with everybody. And then when it comes to like the aviating scenes, I think it was fantastically done. Like the way they were moving about, I'm not sure if it was done similar to like Top Gun Maverick when it comes to them actually flying the plane, or if it was done through a different method, but the way the sequences were played out was just really visually stunning to look at. One particular scene with the bullets flying, going past it looked for like stunning cinematography, and it was just visually a great thing to look at. And storyline, plot wise, the way they were able to take down like the bridges and able to like help in terms of the war, I thought was an incredible performance and an incredible third act when it comes to that aspect of the movie. And like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be compared to Top Gun Maverick and Top Gun, and it's going to be like similar in terms of like the scenes and the sequences there. The tone and the structure of the movie, the tone and the structure of like the aviating scenes, completely different because of the plot of Top Gun Maverick versus the plot of this, just completely two separate things. So with the aviation scenes in this particular movie, it was really perfectly designed for what they were going to do in the movie, and what it was designed perfectly for the plot of the movie to help with the war and the war sequences too. Just everything was done to perfection here. Now, ultimately, what I feel like made this movie too was that third act, the last part of the movie when it comes to like the sequences during the war, sorry, because you have Jonathan Majors' character, his plane gets hit, he has to like land the plane, and as I mentioned with the camaraderie, his team just like watching him, making sure that he like lands, but because he crashes the plane, he's stuck in the plane. And then you have Glen Powell's character there with him all the way, and you just like, they're like this at that sequence of the movie, at that part of the movie, that by that time they're like this, and you just feel that emotion because again, it's based on a true story. You have Jonathan Majors' character just dying in the plane, and like the weight and the emotion of the scene too is just very heartbreaking and very emotional to watch. Like, you can feel that, you can feel the heartbreak, you can feel the emotion, you can feel the sadness in Glen Powell's voice, you can feel it in his face. Just watching him, Jonathan Majors' character, just die in the plane was just so heartbreaking. And because it was done in real life, it's just, it hits harder, I feel like. And then once you get to like the actual like final sequences, the funeral, like seeing Jonathan Majors like in character's wife and daughter there was just heartbreaking. It was really sad. It was really like a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking punch to the stomach sequence at that funeral scene. And I think this movie, the storytelling was done very well when it comes to like the actual movie in itself. I think they did a fantastic job. And then based on like what they showed at the end of the movie, the fact that like Jesse Brown, real life, his children, his grandchildren, like they're still working with Tom Hudner's family, and like their history, they're still together, they're still quite tight. their grandkids are still working towards trying to get the body. The fact that they still haven't been able to recover the body is so heartbreaking, but the fact that they're still working on it generations after generations, trying to get all of this fixed and get the end goal, I feel like was just an added punch to the gut at the end of the movie. But overall, just the movie in itself was just so fantastic to watch. Really great sequences, really heartbreaking, and Jonathan Majors, Glen Powell, once again, just fantastic in their roles in the movie. So one that I highly recommend if you haven't seen this movie. Again, as I mentioned, one of the most underrated movies of 2022. But thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, like button, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on future videos, future reviews here on the channel. Also, got a Twitter, link is in the description down below so that you know whenever I post. This is YK Reviews.